we can.
Each man must do his bit.
Hi and welcome to another edition of Public Interest. I am Gabriela, Patram. We're so happy that you can join us today. With me is former President of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana and leader of the People's National Congress Reform, Mr. David Granger. Sir, thank you for joining us again and welcome.
Well, it's Friday and I'm back. Thank you.
How have you been?
I'm good. Avoiding the COVID. I'm getting, keeping abreast with the developments in our country.
Mr. Granger, I'm considering this a very special edition of Public Interest because we're going to be talking about independence. Next Wednesday on May 26th, we're going to be celebrating 55 years as an independent nation, which is another milestone. My first question to you is, you were elected president in 2015 and immediately set the theme for the 50th independence anniversary celebrations by declaring 2016 as the year of Renaissance. What was your vision and reasons for describing our 50th independence as that year?
The year of Renaissance was for me very important. Well, to start with, I became 21 years old when we became independent in 1966, and my entire generation looked forward to independence. So we remember 1966 very well. So when I became president in 2015, I was very happy to have the honor of leading Guyana into its 50th anniversary celebration. For us who witnessed independence in 1966, it was a bittersweet experience. We became independent under state of emergency. It was a very unhappy time. At that time too, the country was deeply divided. The People's Progressive Party, which had been in office from 1957 to 1964, had been defeated in the elections of 1964, and it refused to participate in the independence constitutional deliberations. It boycotted the celebrations except for the token appearance of Dr. Jagan and his son Joey, and I think Fenton Ramsahoy and Ranjit Chandni Singh. Just a small delegation came. But the PPP boycotted the celebration, boycotted the constitutional talks, and boycotted the National Assembly. So we started off as a broken nation. Not only were we in a state of emergency, but the country is deeply divided. There were many organizations which were based on ethnicity, and there were some places in Georgetown where African and Indian people couldn't go. There were exclusive clubs, cricket, golf, social clubs. So there was little social cohesion, and there was this boycott by the People's Progressive Party and the state of emergency. So I had hoped that in 2016, when we celebrated our 50th anniversary, we would have a renaissance, a rebirth, a renewal. It was an opportunity to do in 2016 what we didn't get done in 1966 because of the divisions and the emergencies and everything else that were prevalent at that time. So I looked forward to 2016. I looked forward to creating a society, or contributing to creating a society which would overcome the divisions of the past. That was my reason for calling it the year of Renaissance, and I think that it was justified. Whether it was a year of Renaissance is for the people to judge, but at that time I thought it was the thing to do, to use the 50th anniversary as a time for healing, not of looking back at the past, but of healing the divisions of the past and looking to the future, and to give this generation an opportunity to aspire to greater things.
Sir, our national motto, Guyana's national motto from the time of independence, one people, one nation, one destiny. It has been described as inspirational rather than a motto that is functional. What do you think hindered the achievement of that, or is hindering the achievement of that?
I think every country in the world has sought to have a motto which is inspirational or aspirational, something to look forward to, something to hope for. And this is what we're hoping for. The first part of that motto is one people. And it emphasizes the fact that people are important. And we felt at the time of independence, and we feel now, that there must be greater social cohesion among the people of Guyana. Could we achieve that cohesion? Well, again, in 2015, I had the opportunity. I created for the first time a Minister of Social Cohesion, a Department of Social Cohesion. It is my view that even after 50 years, one of the gravest problems, we had a lot of problems, sea defense and solid waste management. One of the greatest problems is the problem affecting the people, that we were still divided. And then again, as I said earlier, I had hoped that the 50th anniversary of independence would be an opportunity for the people to come together and bury the grievances and differences of the past. I thought there would have been a new thinking by 2016 after 50 years. I am not sure that we achieved that. As you know, from the time the PPP administration took office last year, they shut down the Department of Social Cohesion. So it seems that we have set back the clock on bringing our people together. If we're talking about a motto with one people, what measures are being put in place to bring those people closer together, to generate greater understanding and respect for one another? And that is what is hampering development in the country, the absence of social cohesion. So the motto is aspirational. I hope that independence anniversary would have made it more functional, that people could have seen, yes, we're coming together, we are really becoming one nation. Because we have one destiny, we have to live together. There's one space called Guyana. And whatever we do, we have to learn to live together. But without that social cohesion, coexistence, cooperation, collaboration will be so much more difficult.
Sir, in doing some reading, I am subject to your guidance and correction here. Doing some reading, Guyana was once referred to as I have it here as the Magnificent Providence. Province, yes, province of the British Empire in the colonial era.
Yes, there used to be a book we used at school at Common Entrance, Student's Companion, and like Ireland was the Emerald Isle, and we were the Magnificent Province. Well, of course, we thought we were the magnificent, we believed it. But in fact, when you look at the Caribbean, the British Caribbean, Guyana is the single largest former colony, bigger than Jamaica or Barbados or Belize or anywhere. In fact, all of the British islands put together would fit snugly into Guyana with room to spare. So we had the land, we had the mineral resources, we had agricultural potential. In fact, in the early 20th century, a lot of St. Lucians used to come to Guyana to go into the mining. In fact, they had St. Lucian festivals in Madia. A lot of Barbadians came in, some went into the police force and went into different occupations. So Guyana was a magnet. It was really a magnificent province. It was really the promised land. It was really El Dorado for many of the Caribbean islanders. Yes, we have run into some difficulties. We are still, I feel, a magnificent province. If you looked at the other countries of the Caribbean, particularly the English-speaking Caribbean, you can see that we still have tremendous advantages: agricultural potential, mineral potential. Now with petroleum, we could become, or we already are on the way to becoming the biggest petroleum producer in the Anglophone Caribbean. We only got Trinidad, there's some other places with small amounts. But yes, we are a magnificent province. We have the capability of recapturing that magnificence, both in terms of our economy and in terms of our population. We have a mixture of ethnicity which really constitutes an asset, not a liability. And we've brought the talents of people from 4 continents together in this country. And I believe in that magnificence, I believe in that promise. And that's why I'm in politics, that is why I created institutions to exploit our potential and to make our people happy and give them a good life. It is not a wish, and we need to plan to exploit our resources for the people's good. And I believe that we are potential. I don't want to say, people are always talking about Guyanese potential and we never perform. We can perform better and we can make that dream of a magnificent province a reality for our children and grandchildren.
Great. Sir, our independence constitution, it declares Guyana as a democratic state.
Yeah.
While our Republican Constitution declares the principal objective of the political system in the establishment of an inclusionary democracy. How can we expect to establish that on the political realm?
Many states claim to be democratic, both in the former socialist countries, Democratic People's Republic of Korea, DPRK, and in the West you have democratic states, and in some countries they call their parties democratic parties. But the word democracy is much overused and abused. In my view, our present Republican Constitution moves closer to making democracy a reality because it speaks of inclusionary democracy. The PPP adheres to what I would call majoritarian democracy, if it's democracy at all. PPP is not interested in power sharing, it's not interested in alliances and partnerships and coalitions. PPP is interested in power. And as far as they're concerned, they have a sort of what they call a Bolshevik approach to power. The only purpose of election is to get a majority. It is not really to respond to the will of the people. As far as they're concerned, once they get a majority of one, they feel they can run government or run roughshod over other people's wishes. So we have to examine what happened in 1964 when the electoral form was changed from first past the post. And truly the PPP won in 1957, they won in 1961, they won the elections. And it is because of the nature of governance under the PPP that the electoral system was changed to first past the post. In the minds of the British and in the minds of the people who supported first past the post, proportional representation in 1964, it gave smaller parties an opportunity to form coalitions. And this is exactly what happened in December 1964. Mr. Burnham from the PNC and Mr. Brigadier from the United Force formed a coalition. And that is how we went into independence in 1966. The coalition administration. This, I believe, was the ultimate objective of the PR system, which is what we have in a modified form today. If we are going to speak about democracy, it has to be inclusionary. When we look at the damage the PPP did to local government, local democracy, while it was in office between 1992 through 2015, we see that they were more interested in uprooting, democratic neighborhood democratic council, and installing interim management committees. We had the devil's own job between 2015 and 2020 to ensure that there was local democracy. Once the PPP controlled the RDC, there was very little contact with the NDCs, very little contact with the Ministry of Communities. It was almost a dictatorial system. And they gave Mr. Bulkan, the Minister of Communities, a hard time. Sometimes I would go to a region, the regional chairman wouldn't come out. He wouldn't bother. She found himself somewhere else. It was almost, like a civil disobedience campaign. Now they're back. They're already starting to sideline the NDCs and councillors who are not in the PPP. So we do not have an inclusionary democracy. The PPP is sucking the oxygen out of the local government system, out of the RDCs, and even out of the central government system. It is farcical for the government not to consult the opposition. This country cannot be run by one party. It has to consult. The Constitution prescribes some form of consultation. We have a petroleum industry, we have to consult. We have the worst pandemic in our history, we have to consult. And we can see what is happening. I don't know what the tally is today with the deaths, it's probably about 350. But this demonstrates the PPP blindness to democratic consultation. They feel they can do everything, without consulting. They can, buy a sugar factory for Skeldon. They could have, fiber optic cable without consulting anybody. And of course, these things end up as white elephants. And this is what is going to happen with the gas project. We need consultation. We need inclusionary democracy. And the government and opposition need to work together for the good of the country. The PPP thinks it can do it on its own, and this is the mistake they made between 1992 and 2015, and this is the mistake they're making again. We can become a democratic state if it is truly inclusionary. My coalition was made up of 6 parties, and that was the platform for inclusionary democracy. We went into government, and we held local government election twice in 2016. Less than a year after we got into office, we held local government elections in 2016, and again in 2018. And I promised that we would hold local government elections whenever they're due, because it's a democratic right. It's not a privilege, it's an obligation of the government to hold elections. And I feel there is also a moral obligation of any government to practice inclusionary democracy. And this is not happening. I think the DPP's Bolshevik approach is that once they get power, well, nobody else is going to share. And that is going to do a lot of damage to the country.
Sir, as we wind down or as we wrap up
so soon
today's program, as we mentioned at the starting of the program, next Wednesday we're going to be celebrating 55 years as an independent nation. And as you mentioned just a few minutes ago, we're in a terrible public health, also public security and public crises, and also a frightening and social and political tensions. Mr. Major, what is the way forward? Come 2026, we're going to be celebrating our 60th independence anniversary. What is the way forward as we head to our 60th and over the next decade, which you are big on the decade of development? What is the way forward?
It's difficult to see into the future with the People's Progressive Party, quite frankly. I had set up a Ministry of Public Security, I set up a national anti-narcotics agency. And you can imagine how it feels to pick up the newspaper, to see a foreign aircraft with 1,000 pounds of cocaine landing on Guyanese territory. As soon as the PPP got in, they dismantled the National Anti-Narcotics Agency. And you heard about the shipments going to Northern Europe. Within the first few weeks of the PPP being in office, there seemed to be some license. We made a lot of headway as a coalition to stamp out narco-trafficking, stamp out piracy. So we're back in a public security crisis. Once we're back into narco-trafficking, there are going to be more execution murders. And we saw that in the middle of the city of Georgetown already under the PPP administration. The public health crisis, people in Guyana are confused. I had appointed Prime Minister Moses Nagamutu as the person, the sole person in complete control of the country's anti-narcotic strategy. He was chairman of the NCTF, the National COVID Task Force. That was his only duty, because we knew it was a pandemic. It's no point having people, handing out hampers and opening, postage stamp exhibition. Pandemic is the problem now. People are dying. If you have a prime minister who's in charge of COVID, put him in charge of COVID. And that a country move in the correct direction. What we are seeing here is what I think the British press is starting to call Modi operandi. It is mirroring the confusion that took place in other countries, Modi operandi. And these things, the public health crisis, the public security crisis, and the social crisis, a lot of people are unemployed, a lot of people are hungry, and we are not getting the type of cohesive response. The government, this administration, once it got into office, almost obliterated our efforts at social cohesion. They've obliterated our efforts at inclusionary democracy. And now the crises are tumbling out of control. Who's going to deal with the anti-narcotics strategy? Who's going to deal with the anti-COVID strategy? We don't have czars, we don't have senior public servants who are in charge of these departments. And look what they're doing to the police. They're demoralizing the Guyana Police Force, the main public security agency. They've dismissed so many public servants that and there is tremendous demoralization in the public sector. We don't know who's next. They're going after retirees. It is a witch hunt, it's a purge. And all of these factors are eroding the moral fabric of society. What will happen in years to come? On the 1st of January 2020, last year, I announced a decade of development. Naturally, the coalition to continue in office, so that we could apply petroleum revenues to certain priorities. One of which was the training of public servants in the college, education at the University of Guyana for more Guyanese, young Guyanese, better health, greater equality, employment for young people. All of these priorities were clearly laid out in what I would call a strategic master plan for the decade of development. What will happen in the PPP? We are moving back to what they did between 1992 and 2015. They've already started to damage public security, they've damaged public health, they've damaged the social relations. People are living in fear. I don't know if the government doesn't realize that. Civil servants are nervous. There's too much anxiety and uncertainty in this country as a result of what the PPP has done. In less than a year, in less than a year. I don't know what will happen by the time this country is ready to celebrate its Diamond Jubilee in 2026. You know, we are already facing a crisis, and the government is making no effort to relieve the fears and anxieties of the majority of this population. That is my considered view. I can't see far ahead into the future, but the little bit that I could see indicates that under the PPP, the future is not bright.
Well, sir, thank you very much for being with us on this program. You thought it was too short?
Well, as I said, next week I look forward to
Yes,
celebrating the
you'll be-
55th anniversary.
Yes.
I remember my young adult days when we had great hopes, and I hope that those hopes return and that future generations would enjoy a better life that they're having right now in 2021.
Well, thank you, sir. And I look forward to seeing you next week again. To our viewers, we say thank you very much for joining us. I'm Gabriela Patram, and on behalf of all of us here at Public Interest, we say happy independence, and we also do encourage you to follow all COVID-19 guidelines to protect yourself and family. Goodbye.